This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 11:07 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. You're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And a happy Tu B'Shvat to everybody who celebrates and recognizes the importance of trees in our lives. Today is the Jewish celebration, coming up on the Jewish celebration of trees.
You mean they had an Earth Day back then?
They had an Earth Day since forever.
Wow, that's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, it is. And, part of the reason for that...
Jewish Arbor Day.
Yeah, and it's been called that, actually.
Has it really?
Yeah,
okay.
It really has.
Okay.
Yep. And, again, a couple of reasons for it. One, we need trees. First of all, right? I mean, try breathing without any trees.
Oxygen,
yeah right?
Yeah.
In fact, I saw a really cute meme the other day that said the trees farm us by giving us oxygen and then later harvest us, which, that's pretty true, actually. It just sounds a little strange that way. Yeah. We provide fertilizer.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yes.
So it's worth noting. Anyway, so the other reason for it is because being required to give a donation, a sacrifice from your fruit requires that the tree be a certain age, because until then it's not producing enough. That's just a real simple, practical aspect of that.
Of course, farmers have known that for years.
Yeah. It's not, I'm sorry, that's not what we would call rocket science. So, yeah. And I and the calendar are just having so much fun here. Yeah. Oh, well, we're just not going to worry about it. Anyway, I love technology when it works. My new crop of students is learning that. Everybody has had an exposure to that phrase this week because it's been that kind of a week.
Now, do you, I have to ask you, because I know Coach Wilson does it with the basketball team, do you check cell phones at the door?
No, I don't, for a couple of reasons. Some people actually use their cell phones as a small computer.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
well,
so they might be accessing something. We also do something in the classes. Haven't actually done it as much this semester as I have in the past, but I use something called Kahoots.
What's that?
It's a quiz game online, and the quiz comes up on the screen, and the students answer it on their phones. So it's a lot of fun.
Okay.
And, they compete against each other and against themselves, and it's kind of interesting.
Okay. Well, all right.
So, yeah.
Okay. And you find that most of your students then kind of follow the rules and just use it for class?
No.
Okay, there you go.
And so I find myself having to say to them, excuse me, let's come back to class. Yeah. The sad part about it, what really gets me when I'm doing that is that I might well have a video going that's kind of humorous and funny, and they're missing all the jokes because they're playing with with their stuff.
So it's tough to write love letters in your class?
That was the teacher look he just got.
Boy, did I get it. Boy, that brings back memories. Oh, okay.
Yeah, what can I say? Something you definitely want to pay attention to. Yeah, the part that gets me, being a teacher, I'll sit there and I'm looking at the student and they're looking, basically down into their crotch because most of them will hide the phone right below the desk. And I'm like, it's not natural to sit there and smile at your crotch, at least not in a classroom setting. And for people to think I don't see those reactions and that response is usually within a few classes, so people have figured out that it's not a good idea. It's in the syllabus not to use the cell phone or the laptop for a video.
Sure.
That doesn't mean people don't do it. And it's to their detriment, but that's people do a lot of things that are to their detriment, unfortunately.
Yeah. I just have no idea what I would have been like. It was bad enough that I was not really the best student in the world. But boy, if I had this electronic thing with me, I have no clue what I would have been.
It's a good point. So I have noticed, of course, that the older students take it much more seriously. That's not news for anybody.
No, that was
older
the case
students
when I was
always have taken it more seriously because they're there more by choice rather than by inertia.
We had a lot of veterans coming back at Loyola when I was there, and boy, they were all A students.
They typically are because they understand what's at stake better.
Yeah.
And it's not worth bragging that you have a 2.5 average. It's certainly better than a 2.4 or 2.3, but that's not really applying yourself. In my course, it's funny. It's just not that hard for a student to earn an A. It's not that I give them an A; they earn it. And in my class, because I run them differently at Kaiser and at IRSC because of the structure of the school behind it. At Kaiser, it's more mandated that it's this percentage and that percentage, and that's dictated to us. And so it is a percentage-based course.
But you probably have more older students at Kaiser, right?
I do. I actually do.
Yeah. I would imagine
the age is older. There's a lot more vets, and the vets tend to be more serious about it. And because anybody who's there because they choose to be there, as opposed to mom and dad said go.
And at Kaiser, you're paying a rather hefty tuition as well. So
yeah, it is more expensive to go to Kaiser.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, you bet. Yeah,
especially the dual enrolls are free, and unfortunately, there's a double-edged sword to free. Right? People don't value it as much. I used to do rescue, and I learned fairly quickly that even if you have a sponsor for the animal, you don't give it to the people free. You just don't. Because it's a free dog. They don't care. Yeah. They've got no skin in the game, as it were.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I never even thought about that. But yeah.
And so I always charged an adoption fee. And there are expenses.
Sure.
So there's no question. And when you charge an adoption fee, even if that particular animal didn't cost that much to rescue and bring back to adoptable status, then it'll go to another animal that has a really high bill, like a vet bill associated with it, that would make it prohibitive for somebody to adopt.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's one of the things that you do. And I never made money on rescue, believe me. It was definitely a negative cost factor. But that's part of life, and that was part of what I just chose to do for many years. I don't do it now, but I've got two lovely little fur children, canine fur children.
And they are cute.
They are sweet.
They are
adorable.
Yeah.
people can watch the videos of them every once in a while.
I've seen them. Yeah, they're great.
Right now, anybody can give them a haircut, but no. They do need to be a little bit of grooming in there. It's been a crazy schedule. So, but anyway, back at IRSC, I run the course on points, and so the students have a real perception of how close they are to that A or not. And it amazes me the number of students. 800 points is a B. The number of students who will work and work and work and get to 803 and then stop, because all they really wanted was a B. And I'm like, you've put so much effort into this class. Get the other 100 points. And then they'll skip assignments. And of course, on an average, that blows your average. So it's a different kind of a setup. And you're dealing with full semester classes versus the 1 month term within the semester. So there's a lot of differences between the structures. And neither one's better or worse. They're just different. So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
But technology, it's so much fun. And part of that's because we've just come off the winter break, and IT departments cannot let a break go by without doing something.
And of course, I shouldn't say this publicly, like most broadcast engineers, they don't write anything down. and you never know, because they never come in when you're here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is sure.
Yeah, it's clear. It's intuitive and clear to them. It's not intuitive and clear to the rest of the world. Yeah, that is one. That is one of the things that I did whenever I wrote software. I did comment. I did put the breadcrumbs in so that people could track it back.
Oh, you never worked in television, that's for sure. Those guys. We would come in after a couple weeks of not doing shows in the studio. They'd rewired everything. Poor people running the boards. They had no idea where the cameras were, where the lights were. It was amazing.
I had some experiences with that, with the mixer in college on the VCR team.
Oh, well, yeah, you'd have been there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, our engineer would do something, and then we'd all be sitting there going,
looking at each other.
Okay, this doesn't work the same way it used to.
I think it's called job security.
Yeah, something. Yeah. And actually, I will give this to the IT person that I worked with at Goodyear. And IT departments, I know, do this, again, because of my own experience in software. But I would report a certain bug, and then they'd fix it, and then they'd come and sit down with you at your desk to have you show them the bug. And, of course, it wouldn't be there. And this one particular time, I had actually done screen prints. And he was sitting at my desk and saying, I don't see the problem. And I looked at him, I said, that's because you fixed it a half hour ago. And he did confess that he had done that. So it's, the games people play. Eric Byrne, the games people play.
Yeah.
Oh, the games people play.
Yeah.
So there's actually a book, and my students have an extra credit assignment. They can look at that book and read it. It's a short read, and discuss it. So it's kind of an interesting piece.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. Huh.
There's some interesting things that have happened over time. So anyway, back to the trees. Tu B'Shvat, New Year's of the trees. And so it's a celebration, it's a recognition. Trees all have a birthday on Tu B'Shvat. And so we plant a tree, and it becomes a year old. And part of that's to age it more quickly, theoretically. It's like racehorses, right? Every racehorse has the same birthday, so that they can all compete in the yearling or the 2-year-olds or the whatever. And same with trees. They all have the same birthday. So if you're in the ground with your roots covered, and Tu B'Shvat, you're a year old at least, or a year older. And we have some trees out in the front of the temple from previous years. And they actually do a wonderful job of cross-pollinating. When we only had one, it flowered, but it never fruited. And now that it's got friends, of course, because the pollination, it now develops fruit, and the fruit's quite nice.
There you go.
Yeah, I've actually grown babies from the fruit.
Yeah, wow. This past summer, when Sequoia National Forest was on fire, and they wrapped some of the old historic trees, and I thought, wow, that's really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It protected them, though.
Yeah.
That fire was just devastating.
And the whole way that the forestry department approaches forest fires has changed, of course. And you and I both know a big part of that's Mount Lemon, when the mountain burned, when the lemon burned. And for those who don't know, Mount Lemon is in the outskirts of Tucson, and there is a little tiny community up 8,000 feet high up on Mount Lemon. And there's biking competitions, biking the Lemon, and there's skiing up on Mount Lemon, which a lot of people don't realize. There's actually a ski track with a triple diamond.
Oh, sure there is, yeah, because there's snow up there in the winter.
There's a lot of snow. You have to have chains sometimes to come and go, and sometimes the roads are even just closed.
We had some of our transmitter engineers trapped up there during wintertime.
Yeah.
When I was at KVOA. Oh, yeah.
Well, it's a popular place to put a transmitting tower.
All of the television stations were there. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a little tower forest up there. And there are some really interesting mountains. Tucson, of course, is nested in 4 mountain ranges. Right.
I love the
Catalinas.
Catalinas are
the
beautiful.
Rincons, the Santa Ritas, and the Tucson Mountains. I remember because the word crest.
Oh.
That's the secret.
See, I never thought of that. Yeah, sure. Okay.
That helps you, those are mnemonics, right? Those are
there
great.
you go. I never thought of that.
So, mnemonics are an interesting thing. That's because our active memory can only hold about 4 or 5 pieces of information. And so when we link a number of things into a mnemonic, then we only have to bring the mnemonic into mind, and then we can break it down. That's called chunking, and it brings disparate parts of information. Like if I sat here and tried to remember the cattle, as you were trying to remember all the names separately, and so there are 4 different bits of information. But for me, they're linked into this word crest. So it's only one part of my active memory. And then I simply have to define it, which is automatic.
Of course, being older, I just have a problem with memory, period.
And part of that is using it, sir.
Well, see, that's
using it or
my
lose
other
it.
problem. Yeah, that's it.
It is an important piece of what we do. And it's not just word games and puzzles on your phone. It's actually sitting down and learning something, whether it's a craft, something mechanical to play with, learning something new that actually requires you to get the smoke coming out from your ears a little bit. And, we've talked about that. That's one of the reasons I like to take classes, because it forces me to learn things and study things I might not otherwise have the discipline to do.
It's interesting, on our IRSC business show, occasionally we had the folks from Lifetime Learning in here. And of course, a lot of the people just have no idea some of these tremendous executives that they bring in here.
Oh, yeah.
And various, stops, various campuses of IRSC. These people are brilliant, and these lifetime learning programs are amazing.
They're a really good deal. There's lots of really good things out there for people to take advantage of. And online, there's Wondrium and great courses and all kinds of things. Not just watching a video that kind of where you know everything that's in it. Right? That's not challenging your learning. That's a feel good. When you know stuff, there's not as much value in it, though, for your brain. We need to keep the brain functioning, need to keep the brain building new neurons and protecting the neurons that are there. If you don't use it, it actually does break down the sheath that protects the neurons. There's a physical thing that happens. And that leads to some of that tip of the tongue phenomenon where, we all have some of that. Right? I call it sometimers. And where, the neurons aren't quite firing the way you want them to. And there are many things that can influence that. Obviously, blood sugar is a big part of it. If it's too high or too low, your neurons aren't going to fire properly. If you're introducing foreign alcohol, drugs, or some substance, it's going to alter that. And your hormones are going to alter that. Lots of things alter it. And it's amazing if we don't get enough sleep, we don't clean the toxic stuff out. And that's really important. And it's not just laying in bed, it's getting some good sleep. And that is something that a lot of people struggle with and have to work at. And the bad habit there that I think a number of older folk get into is if you don't have the busy schedule, if you're not doing a lot of things, then you sit on the couch and do something and you doze, and then you can't sleep at night. And then that starts the pattern of disrupting your sleep cycle, which means you don't get the good deep sleep that cleanses your body. So those are important things. We've got lots of stuff going on in our bodies and in our heads. One of the most important things any of us can do on any given day is take a walk outside. A little bit of sunshine, really, really important.
Agreed. Yep.
And it even helps reset the clock when you travel. If you're crossing a time zone, your body it has some innate ability to figure out where you are on the planet. And when it looks up and sees the sun, it shifts the internal clock. That's your rhythm for falling asleep, the circadian rhythms.
Whoa, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
As much flying as I used to do.
Yeah.
That I should have thought of that.
Anybody who travels, it's really, really important to take a walk as early as you can when you get to your destination. And the worst thing you can do is arrive at night. Although then if you're really tired and you can go to sleep and then get up in the morning again, take that step out onto the balcony, look outside, find the sunlight, and get some of it into your eyes. Not stare at the sun, but just get some light reflecting into your eyes.
I gotcha. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
That's important. If you're depressed, a walk in the sunshine will do wonders for you. Some of the things that lead to depression are vitamin D deficiencies, and of course the sun helps give you some of that vitamin D.
It's very interesting you say that. I remember a few years back when the University of Washington did a study on suicides in Seattle.
Because in the darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was so cloudy for so long. Yeah.
That's why February is so challenging some years. Because of the darkness and the shortness of the days. And there's nothing going on like a holiday and parties to keep you moving, if you will. So yeah, we see a lot of health challenges over the holidays in the winter because people ignore the health warning signs. And that means that when you finally end up in the hospital, you're much sicker than you would have been had you not been trying to not disrupt the family party or something like that.
Because you've been eating junk.
Well, there is that too. There's a lot more overeating, and there's a lot of junk. And so right now, not only we've got a little bit of COVID spread on our bodies, but we've also got, just coming off the holidays, that wonderful little sugar wash in our bodies.
Well, and depending on how badly you eat, I mean, that does affect your your body's ability to fight off a virus.
Well, and legitimately, it's harder when everybody's got cookies and sweets and candy and treats and all kinds of things. Everybody's bringing it. Everybody's partying. There's so many events going on that there's so many more opportunities to overeat and to eat the wrong things. Whereas during the year, you might reach for something healthier, at least some of the time. But if somebody's shoving a donut under your nose, the donut's there. And you kind of start doing this, it's only one, and after all, it's the holidays. And we rationalize to ourselves really well Yeah, we are the biggest liars to ourselves, usually. And we know it. We know when we're fibbing to ourselves. We just don't want to admit it. Humans are interesting creatures. And we are all perfectly human. That is how we are designed, and so there is a challenge there. There's a challenge and an invitation. Are you being and that doesn't mean don't have fun, but are you being the best and happiest person you can be? It doesn't mean don't have fun. But how often are you taking a shortcut that you know isn't in your own best interest or the best interest of those you care about? We make those decisions and we rationalize it all the time. That's a human thing. And so we have things to remind us, to bring ourselves back, to recognize things. And the cycle of the calendar is part of that game. So right now we have the New Year's of the trees. We're going to recognize the importance of nature in our lives, because without this planet being healthy, none of us will be healthy. If we really make the planet toxic, if we think that somebody else is going to clean our house for us, we need to be our own maids on the planet. We need to recognize what the trees need so that they can take care of us. It needs to be a symbiotic relationship, because it is. We need each other. And beyond that, then we're going to come to Purim, and Purim is the beginning of recognizing the foibles of your ego and of the lower human drives. I guess I'll put it that way. But Purim is an interesting Jewish festival. It's a kind of an upside down day. It's a make fun of yourself in good ways and just have a good time. Be a little bit silly. Do something silly for Purim.
Now, when is that?
Purim is 2 months this year. It's going to be 2 months after Tu B'Shvat. So it's around the 14th, 15th of, 2 months is March. It's 1 month before Passover. In we have a Jewish leap year this year. And normally it goes the middle of the month, the 15th of the lunar cycle is Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of the next month, Adar, is Purim, and then the 15th of Nisan is Passover or Pesach.
Wow.
This year we have 2 Adars, because you can't just do 4 days and make that a leap year.
It's very close to St. Patrick's Day. You can kind of wind them all up together.
I've said this before. Cultures in other religions, the frame is a little different. The culture is different, but essentially we all are teaching the same thing. Slightly different versions of it, slightly different varieties. Different cultures need different emphasis. And so there's slightly different things in each religion. But at the base, they're all trying to teach you to be a better person, to be more connected to the world, to the planet, to each other. And I love, for example, out of Taoism, the teaching that if you don't understand your own body, you can't begin to understand the universe, because your body is a small universe. And I explain it this way to my students. I hold up a bottle of water, because I usually have a bottle of water in the class. I'm usually drinking water. Not as much with masks on, but but I'll hold that up and I'll say, what do we know about this bottle of water? If we wanted to know everything about this bottle of water, what would we have to understand? And so it's not just that it's a bottle of water, and it's not just that it's spring water or purified water or distilled water, but we also have to understand the plastics involved in creating the container. We need to understand torsion in order to understand the cap on that bottle. We need to understand printing, because it's got a printed label. We need to understand piping, because we've got to get it from the water source into the bottle. We need to, so there's a ton of things that we really need to know if we're going to know everything about that bottle of water. We need to understand the chemistry and the physics behind the molecules of the water. And why is it that if we get purified water, we have to reintroduce trace elements so that it doesn't taste funny to people? What is it about our taste buds that affect that? You see, it's much more than just a bottle of water when we want to know everything about it. And that's that's a simplified version of the Taoist idea, that if you really drill down and get to know everything there is to know, then you have to learn a lot of things. Right? You have to understand the valences of the molecules of water, and why water expands at 4 degrees and then shrinks, because that's different. So that's getting into chemistry and physics again.
I know you were talking, a little bit about the water here, and we just lost this week a guy that used to do fishing reports for this station for almost 30 years.
Wow.
And on WSTU for 40 years, and Henry Kaimato down in Jensen Beach. And I remember when he started his Saturday fishing shows talking about, if we aren't careful, the seagrasses are going to go away, and the fish and the manatees will die. And look what's happening.
And the ecosystem is going to get messed up beyond words.
Yep.
And and we, as humans, we've got a bad history of overgrazing, overfishing, overfarming, polluting, and not cleaning up our rooms, if you will, not cleaning up our messes. It's really just a expansion of, if you take your dog for a walk, take a bag with you and use it.
Yeah, I mean, look at us with the river and the algae blooms. How much of that algae bloom is coming from all the beautiful lawns in Orlando?
Yeah, so if we look at the water turned to blood in the story of coming out of Egypt, the first plague, was that really blood, or was that like blood, as in an algae bloom, a crimson algae bloom?
Whoa.
Because
here you go again.
Because
wow.
People were just dumping the trash and the pollutants into the Nile.
Yeah.
Into the water source. And, people tanned leather back then. It's not like we didn't use toxic chemicals. Yeah.
I never thought of that.
They did a lot of very toxic things. And there wasn't OSHA. And there wasn't an EPA. And so that stuff just went into the water and into the countryside and into the water basin. So maybe that was an algae bloom.
Wow.
It makes complete sense.
May not have been blood, but red algae.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
We don't have a chemist who was there. So I like to tell my students MSNBC and Fox News weren't there to make a video. Nor was Reuters or AP.
Or if any of your students ask you, how did this world survive without cable?
No, they simply can't perceive of it. They can't perceive of a world without cell phones and tablets.
Oh, yeah, that's sure.
Yeah, Moses had 2 tablets, right? It was the original zip drive. We've been unpacking it ever since.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, you and I are chuckling because we're both thinking of Mel Brooks. That wonderful scene. And if somebody hasn't seen The History of the World, Part 1,
you gotta watch.
You need to see that. You need to see Moses drop the tablets.
Oh.
Oops.
Mel Brooks is one of the funniest people I think I've ever met. I mean, it's from the get-go.
Yeah.
The conversation,
Yeah.
it's going to be absolutely insane. And he's a wonderful man.
Yeah.
Wonderful man.
Well, and this week I've been thinking of, they've been showing some of the bloopers with working with Betty White.
Oh, yeah.
To live a life, and I think that's a valid thing, right? Live your life such that when you die at 99, the world says you died too soon.
Yeah.
Right? That's a life well lived. And she definitely is a role model for people to aspire to. And I'm not saying that everything she did was wonderful, because we're all human. however, what a great, when she's messing up on the studio, people are not getting mad at her. Right? They're laughing because, and you hear it coming from the cameras and and the rest of the people on the set.
The cast. I mean, it's like Carol Burnett used to talk about that all the time about Harvey Korman.
Yeah.
I think we had this conversation.
Yeah, we had that discussion
before.
Actually after the show last.
Yeah, and it was like, okay, the outtakes, in a lot of cases back in those days, were far funnier than what went on the air.
Because comedy is as much tied to the moment.
Yes.
As it is to the smartness of the writers. The writers are excellent and amazing, and the pressure of having to produce like a weekly show as quickly as they do, that's a ton of pressure. And, of course, the Dick Van Dyke Show was one of the ones that gave us a little bit of an insight into what it was like on the back when they were trying to come up with jokes and things.
Sure.
And
how would Johnny Carson, perfect example. Those guys that wrote for Carson were amazing.
Yeah. Or who
every night.
Who write for any of the live
sure
night shows.
Yeah.
Are just having to put out a monologue for each of them. That's the model, right? That monologue that you've got to have, and it's got to be zippy, and it's got to be to the events of the day, or people aren't going to be interested. That's a challenge. And people like to think that the star, the celebrity, is writing all of that stuff himself or herself. They're not. I don't think they could. I don't think they could generate that much material. It's always a team behind them that are supplying some lines. They might add some, and they might come up with some things right in the moment that either fail or don't fail.
Yeah, I remember when Fox was started, and I was fortunate to be there, and Lorne Michaels came in, and it was good. He was going to have this brand new show called the Wilton North Report, which you never see on his resume, by the way. And for obvious reasons, it was probably the worst television show in the history of television. But he had this long, lanky kid writer by the name of Conan O'Brien, who was one of the funniest people I have ever met. And look what happened to him. He had his own career, and yeah. That's
Life
the
does
one
its
good
thing.
good thing that came out of that mess.
Yeah. And now everything is well. There still are shows in front of a live audience.
Yeah,
not as many.
No,
and certainly
COVID. And of course, COVID is killed.
COVID is hurting a lot of that. I wear this ring that says Gamze Ya'avor, this too shall pass. And I got it at the beginning of COVID, and I said I'm going to wear it through COVID because there is an end in sight, and I know that I'm going to lose sight of that from time to time. And so, I'm staring at that ring more and more.
I'm beginning to wonder now. And going back to Stewart's show, talking about the Supreme Court yesterday, it's two huge decisions, but somehow, some way, we got to fight through this thing and end it.
Absolutely. And actually, couple of my classes, it came up as a discussion item because it's on the students' minds too. And the classrooms have a mix, of course. Students are highly encouraged to be vaccinated, and at Kaiser we actually take a temperature test every day coming on campus, and we wear an armband once you're temperature tested for the day. And so they're different colors for each day.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're very serious about it. IRSC, it's more recommended than it is at Kaiser. Kaiser, again, private university can be a little more dictatorial than a state college.
Well, they take our temperatures, those of us working on the scores table at IRSC, they take our temperatures before Every game? Yeah.
Well, it's a safety issue.
Sure it is.
And I had a couple of students that I'm assuming, I'm not going to name any names, but I'm assuming that they were either anti-vaxxers or somehow in that group. And and I know that Stuart addressed it too. I'm on the spiritual care team at Cleveland Clinic. I had to get a whole bunch of vaccines just to volunteer at Cleveland Clinic, just to get a badge to get in and see my members, or to volunteer for the spiritual care staff. And so if they can do that for somebody who volunteers, you certainly can do it for somebody that you're giving a paycheck to.
And I know a couple nurses there that they're refusing to get vaccinated, and just found out the other night that there is a well-known doctor who has refused. He's at Cleveland down in Weston.
And I really
don't
have
get
to. I don't get why somebody in the healthcare industry doesn't understand it. And as I pointed out to my students, so in St. Lucie County, we are roughly 62 to 64%. Let's say 64% vaccinated. And that means 36% of the population is not. 95% of the cases in the hospital are unvaccinated. So let's look at that in terms of numbers and break it down. Let's imagine that we have 1,000. We obviously have a lot more than 1,000 people in St. Lucie, and I don't know the actual numbers, but the numbers are really pretty high for how many have COVID. So let's imagine, just so that we can break this down into numbers for people, that we have 1,000 people who live in St. Lucie County. That means that 360 of them do not have the vaccine and 640 of them do. Rough approximate numbers. Let's imagine that there's 100 COVID cases. Again, just to keep the numbers really easy. That means 95%, so 95 of them are unvaccinated and 5 are vaccinated. So that means if I'm vaccinated, I'm one of the 640, of which 5 are sick. If I'm unvaccinated, then I'm part of the 360, of which 95 are sick. So the percentage of people with COVID who have not been vaccinated is much higher. And we see that in the population. We see more and more people coming down with COVID. Omicron is very, very contagious. And thankfully, it's not as quickly horrible as other variants seem to have been. That's just and that's not a scientific comment, folks. That's just a personal observation. I don't see as many really horribly sick people, but there will be people who will die from it. Wouldn't you like to do something to minimize the likelihood of you being one of those people or somebody you care about? We're going to lose people to many different things. The regular flu is down because of the COVID protocols, which is interesting. We don't have as many people with the regular flu. And the flu took out people.
Oh, yeah. What was one a few years ago? Like 40, 50, 60,000 that died.
Yeah. Well, my father-in-law I never got to know because he had died from a complication from the flu. So it's very real, and I've mentioned this other times, Bobby Gentry's song. There was a virus going round last spring, Papa caught it, and
Sure.
he died.
Yeah.
So we've always had things coming round and going round, and there's, of course, car accidents, and there's heart attacks, and there's cancers. There's lots of things that take people out. If you can do something to minimize the likelihood of one of those things taking you out, and it's not something horrible. If 64% of St. Lucie County is fully vaccinated, and to my knowledge, not one of those people has died from the vaccine. And if you're saying, well, the government's putting something in your arm and tracking you, they don't need to. They've got your phone. You're much more trackable by your phone that you won't leave anywhere. And yes, the government can actually see not only where you are, but where you've been for the last 2 years by your phone, by where your phone number has been used. No, they're not watching everybody because there's not enough manpower or people power on the planet to track everybody. But if they need to know where you've been, they can single out that data, because we are living in the age of the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things keeps track of us. Whether it's your microwave at home, Alexa, your TV, any of those things tells, Big Brother, if you want to use George Orwell's, it goes into the Internet of Things information, and it's not personalized. It doesn't say that Jim Jones did this, but it does say that it has enough demographics that they can reverse engineer it and figure out that it's you when they need to.
Mr. Google knows all.
Well, the point I like to make to
That's
people...
That's rather sexist.
I understand that you just said Mr. Google. Got it. You could say Dr. Google.
Dr.
And
Google,
there you don't
right.
know a gender, right?
That's it, yes.
And it's true. So there's a couple of things. When you Google things, what you see on your Google search is affected by the things you've searched for. So that when you and your neighbor and your neighbor's neighbor Google something, you will get different things on your search results. Because the algorithm, the formula that Google uses to decide which websites to show you or which things to show you is affected by your search history. I had somebody once upon a time ask me, why is it that I keep getting these sites when I Google you? It's like, because you keep Googling those things. And so they get a higher value from Google. You're adding to their SEO. And you're making them a more likely site to show up on your search. It's not that there's that many of them, and it's not that it's that linked. It's that you've linked them. And the search algorithm knows your history. And I actually had a group of people do a Google search sitting side by side and compare their laptops and see that they get different results, because it's all dependent on what you've searched for. Similarly, if let's say you're shopping for a sofa and you go on one or two sites and you look at that, maybe you look at Rooms to Go and Wayfair, and
comes up on your phone for the next 10 years.
Exactly. It'll keep coming up on your phone. And God forbid for you if you leave something in a cart, because then you're really going to get messages. You left something in the cart. And I really love when those come into my email and I haven't put my email into the site. And I'm like, okay, thank you, Spider on the web. Because that's what that is. It's they know who you are. Not on a personal level, but on an automatic kind of level.
We got a couch from, one of the big name places here. Carol gets email from them.
Yeah.
I bet 4 or 5 times a week. And, you
Yeah,
got it.
And then, of course, you've got spam and the folks who don't obey the rules about what you can and can't do. But there's a ton of information there. We live in the age of the Internet of Things. And it's been increasingly that way. I chuckled at a dossier. Somebody showed me the dossier of me about 20 years ago. So it was right before we moved out of Ohio. And I chuckled at the things that were in it. I actually had to spend some time and undo some of the things that were in there. It showed me as being divorced from my mother. So it had some errors. But
was this Wikipedia?
No. It was we had done we'd applied for something at a bank, and the bank officer knew me and chuckled so much at some of the things that were on the report that he showed me the report.
Wow. Okay.
And it was interesting. So if we think that it's new, it's not. What is happening now, though, is that, of course, the military have been fingerprinted for a long time and can be identified that way. pilots are toe printed because your foot in the boot's more likely to survive. But now they actually...
Whoa, wait a minute. Back up. What? I never knew that.
Yeah, they take footprints and toe prints from pilots. Just in case that's all that's left of you.
Whoa.
Helps
okay.
identify. It's because people need closure. People need to know when something's happened to somebody. The other thing that we have now with the military is they all give DNA. So we've got all different kinds of DNA information, and a lot of people use these the genealogy things, and the folks that are trying to track the bad guys use that to help data mine, to find. There's a ton of stuff that's going on. So, they don't need something in your arm to keep track of you, whoever that is. But if you've ever had a knee replacement or a hip replacement or a shoulder replacement, there's a serial number in your body from that replacement, again, so that it can be traced back if there's ever a need. They're not being done to invade privacy. They're being done to help you down the road if you need it.
And if
or
you don't know
help
what's
your
in
family.
don't know what's in the vaccine, eat a hot dog.
Yeah, eat a hot dog or a hamburger.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anybody who hasn't seen mystery meat in a cafeteria.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Anybody who likes meatloaf? There's another one, right? What's in the meatloaf? What's in the meatballs? Lots of things we have no idea. Chicken nuggets, not just McNuggets, but all nuggets. Anything that's processed. Right, if you're not just eating fruits and nuts from the trees. So as I draw this to a close, because I see that I've only got about 2 minutes left, again, happy birthday trees, Chag HaIlanot, the festival of the trees. We're going to be celebrating by eating fruits and nuts and things that grow on trees.
Very cool.
Yeah, we'll augment it a little bit with some grape juice and things like that aren't from trees but are other plants. But yeah, it's going to be a fun time. We're going to do that Seder tonight, so you can catch it live on Facebook, as always. And then next weekend is our catered dinner, and you can make a reservation. You can get curbside pickup of a meal. You can help us feed the first responders. We're looking for sponsors for that. And then on Sunday and Monday of that week, we have the plant sale, our monthly plant sale. This is Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast, www.eitzchayim.org, or catch us on Twitter or Facebook.
All right, you're easy to find right opposite Met Stadium.
Yeah, Clover Park.
Clover Park?
You are certainly welcome to give us a call and check us out and see if we are your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. Have a great week, everyone. Have a great Festival of the Trees. Hug a tree.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talking the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world. Go plant a tree.